Welcome back, welcome back. From Mexico to Egypt, Indonesia to Senegal and Bangladesh, never has the issue of food been more acute around the world. In the last few weeks, food riots have broken out across 3 of the world's continents. The crisis has already brought down one government in the Caribbean island of Haiti. The heads of the UN, the World Bank and the IMF all spoke out this week on the worsening situation. So how serious is it? Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by Josette Sheeran, the head of the World Food Programme, the UN agency set up to combat world hunger. Welcome, welcome, Josette. How serious is it? Is it really worse than people realize?
Well, David, I think the key issue here is resiliency, and for the world's poorest people, it's hitting them extremely hard. We've seen food prices double since last June, and then just in the past food weeks, commodity prices have soared again. So the price of rice in the past 2 months has doubled for people in Asia, and we're seeing this roll through the world kind of like a silent tsunami. We've really never experienced anything quite like this. Typically, we see hunger after a conflict, after an earthquake, after an actual tsunami, and it knows borders. We know where it is. We know where the problem is. But here, we don't know where it's hitting and how deep, and so this has been something that's been very hard to stay on top of and make sure that we don't see the kind of abject hunger and malnutrition that is really devastating to people.
And is it, Josette, is it availability or price, or both equally, or what, that's making this dramatic change?
Well, unfortunately, David, it's a mixture of both, and both these factors may be with us for some time. So for the past 3 years, the world has been consuming more food than it produces. And this has drawn down stocks, emergency stocks and usual grain stocks to their lowest level in 30, 60 years, and for some stocks, the lowest level ever on record. What that means is in many places, we only have a 30-day supply, and if a harvest fails, things could get really bad. So there's very tight supplies, and many countries are blocking their exports to try to keep the food inside, and that's making the situation even more challenging. With the prices, we've been experiencing for the first time in decades a rise in prices for the last 4 years. But starting in June, they went into an aggressive pattern of increases that I think has really triggered the kind of crisis we're seeing today, because it's more than the world's poor can absorb.
So what can we do? What can be done? Who should do it?
Well, I think this may be a wake-up call. For many people in the world, in the richer, developed agricultural nations, it's a shock to know that food doesn't spontaneously appear on food shelves. We actually have to think about the food supply system, especially in an era of climate change with increasing desertification and severe floods. So I think there's a wake-up call to get serious about the business of farming and agriculture in the world, and for governments to invest the kind of money that's needed to secure the global food chain.
And how long would you say it will take for the food shortage situation getting worse to start getting better? Is that a matter of years or what?
Well, David, it's our assessment that we have a short-term challenge, meaning for the next 3 to 4 years before these things balance out. For the World Food Programme, this is hitting us very hard because we procure our food in over 69 developing nations around the world, and our food prices have gone up so much. I'm going to hold up a cup from our school feeding site in Rwanda. This cup is typical. We feed 20 million children a year throughout the world, including most of the school children in Mauritania, school children in Egypt, Syria, Pakistan, all over the world. Today, I can fill this cup 40% less than I could in June just because of the soaring prices. But the level of vulnerability is so huge. For these children, most of them, this is the only cup of food they'll get for the day. That's how vulnerable they are. I was just in Kenya, and I found many of the kids taking half the food home to give to their siblings who had no food. So we're really appealing to the world to help us be able to meet the emergency needs of children trapped in these circumstances, so we don't see the kind of malnutrition that will stay with them for a lifetime. We need to step up emergency action now. I'll travel to the Gulf next month to make an appeal. And I've been traveling, I've been on the road for 4 months, really appealing to the world to help us keep this cup full.
To keep this cup full and then eventually go on to bigger and bigger cups. That would be good news, wouldn't it? Josette, thank you very much for joining us. We hope to carry on this conversation together again. We really appreciate it. Thank you. On Sunday, Paraguayans will go to the polls to vote on a new president. For the first time in 61 years, the ruling Colorado party is threatened with defeat. Recent polls put the former bishop and opposition candidate Fernando Lugo in the lead. But after so long as a one-party state, can Paraguay make a violence-free transition? Joining me now, I'm delighted to say, from Asunción, is Maria Emma Mejia, the former Colombian foreign minister and the head of the Organization of American States mission to supervise the electoral process in Paraguay. Maria Emma, why is it necessary for there to be this supervision? Because there is a big fear of it not being free and fair?
Well, it is always important for the OAS to supervise, to observe elections, and particularly this one is a very interesting one and difficult because, as you know, it's not very typical to have a former bishop, to have an ex-military who had a coup, and also a woman for the first time as leading candidate. Secondly, because as you said, the party, the Colorado party, has been in office for over 60 years. It's to make it easier to understand, similar to Mexico, the PRI in Mexico that ruled for so many years. So of course, the elections are very tricky. The tensions in Latin America between ideology that has not been in the picture ever for Paraguayans puts this country in the map. Don't forget that this is the largest per capita producer of energy together in with Argentina and Brazil. So it all makes it very tense, but very interesting.
Yes, and in fact, the president cannot run again, can he? Because the constitution in Paraguay is such that the president cannot run for a second term.
Exactly, you're right, but what he did, the president, is to make an exception and to lead the list that of his party for the Senate. So he is a candidate leading the #1 list for the Senate. Here we are playing a big role, all the international observers. We have like 70 people trying to be all around the country and trying to certify and make sure that this word that has been said so many times here, fraud, won't happen, and that elections will be, you know, to fortify democracy and not to leave doubts about transition, if there is to be a transition for the first time in over 60 years, or well, or whatever the decision of Paraguayans would be.
And if there is a transition for the first time in 61 years, do you think Paraguay will be able to cope with that? Are you optimistic that it would work?
I am, you know, because I think Latin America has had many transitions in this decade. I mean, everything has happened from left to right to different parties to indigenous people like Bolivia for the first time ruling. So changes are at the first list in Paraguay and also in Latin American politics these days. So we'll see what they decide, the Paraguayans. What is important is that there is a huge turnout to the elections. Paraguayans are used to vote, over 60% participate. So I hope we have a nice day and people go to the polls.
Thank you very much, Maria Emma. In fact, to use the phrase you used, have a nice day. Anyway, on April the 20th is that vital vote for Paraguay. And that's all for this week. Join me again in 7 days' time when I'll be joined by, a list of thousands, including writer Isabel Allende, looking at whether homeopathic medicine really works. Is the magic of the minimum dose really magical? Plus much more. All the best. Till then. Bye-bye.